Hello, I am High Heel Knight. Welcome to my channel. This is my swearing in Star Trek rebuttal to Steve Shives. For those that don't know, CBS All Access, now Paramount Plus, has several streaming shows for Star Trek. And in those streaming shows, there's a lot of mature content and swearing, including the F word, which riled up a significant portion of the fan base. So Steve Shives posted on his YouTube channel that he has no problem with the mature language and content in these new streaming programs. And he has a particular opinion of what fans like me should do about that. Well, this is my rebuttal to that video. Because the topic is about swearing and foul language, there will be swearing and foul language in my video. Also, if you haven't seen Steve Shives' video, there is a link in the description. I recommend that you check it out after you finish watching my video, please. There's also timestamps in the description area in case you want to bounce back and forth throughout my presentation. Also, I want to say that, yes, these programs did debut when the streaming service was called CBS All Access, and now it's Paramount Plus. And I'll probably be saying Paramount Plus for the majority of this presentation because there's way too many streaming services nowadays. So in those instances when I should be saying CBS All Access, but I'm saying Paramount Plus, I know. The core of Steve Shives' presentation is that there has been foul language throughout the history of Star Trek, but that foul language was restricted by the rules and regulations of the time. Television and movies are monitored by the FCC and MPAA respectively. And in order to get certain ratings or getting things on TV or in theaters for certain demographics, they had to self-restrict themselves. You couldn't get as raunchy as you might want to if you were under less constraints. So for instance, imagine Dr. McCoy really being able to lay it in to Mr. Spock. Imagine Benjamin Sisko becoming more and more frustrated as the War of the Dominion goes on. Or Chief O'Brien, who is played by Colm Meaney. Colm Meaney is such a natural swearer that he's probably one of the few people that could challenge Samuel L. Jackson to a duel of motherfucker and potentially win. If words like shit, asshole, and motherfucker were allowed on 60s television, then Star Trek would have had very colorful language and George Carlin probably would have had much of a comedy career. It's only now, thanks to streaming, that the brand is allowed to do that. But here's the thing. I would argue that the restraints that the show and the brand had experienced throughout its development is one of the reasons why it was successful, why it became such a household name, why it became valued and passed on through generations, no pun intended. See, the longer a company or a brand or a product continues, the more of a reputation that it gets with its audience or consumers. Take, for instance, Superman. Now, if you go throughout his entire history, you'll find moments where he's killed people or done things that led to people's death or mowed down several dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of nameless alien grunt soldiers. But the core of the brand is that Superman is the best of us. He always takes the high road. He doesn't succumb to revenge and anger or desperation. He values life. He values people. He values opinions. He is the best of us. So when you go into Man of Steel and you see Superman snapping General Zod's neck and killing him, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like that's something that Superman would do. In the context of that specific story, it does make sense. In that moment, yes, it does make sense. But as far as the brand, as far as presentation, here's our Superman film, and he straight up murders somebody like that viciously, is like, no, that doesn't feel right. With Star Trek being around for 50 years, it's gained a certain reputation and expectations. There's certain things you expect to see and not see, things you expect to hear and not hear when you put on Star Trek programming. I feel it's sort of similar to the majority of Disney animated projects. When you go see a Disney animated production, it's targeted to kids. They want the kids to buy the toys and the clothes and the book bags and the bed sheets and the blah, 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 blah. But the productions can be enjoyed by all audiences, by all generations, by all walks of life. Whereas with Star Trek, I feel that it was targeted to grown-ups. It talks about racism, classism, sexism, politics, and blah, 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 blah. The topics are for grown folks. But when you watch it, it can be enjoyed by all ages, by all generations, by all groups. In other words, it's not a matter of keeping Star Trek safe for kids. It's a matter of being able to watch Star Trek with your kids without having to worry about covering their eyes and ears. Star Trek has never been family friendly, but at the same time, it's never been family unfriendly, if I can make up a word like that. So Steve Shives talked about an incident involving swearing during his childhood, which sort of created the foundation for how he feels about swearing going forward throughout his life. So I want to talk about something from my childhood that certainly influenced me throughout my life, and that's Prince. I love Prince. I've been a fan from Prince ever since the 80s. I have nearly every album he's released. Going to one of his concerts was just one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. Now, Prince's music has always been edgy, always pushed it out, always been controversial. He even had a song called Controversy. The way he acts, the way he dresses, the topics he sings about, they're all pushing the envelope and making you really think and question or feel certain ways. But at the same time, in his early career, he had to work with restrictions and constraints and censorship. Take the song Let's Go Crazy. You might not know that the song is not just a cool party song, but also a song about faith and religion. See, it opens up with that nice big chord from the organ, ah, and the lyrics are, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life." He's beginning a sermon, but at the time, he couldn't mention God, the devil, heaven and hell, and all that stuff in the actual lyrics. So he found substitutions. "I'm not going to let the elevator break us down" is his way of saying, I'm not going to let the devil drag us down to hell. "Oh no, let's go crazy, let's get nuts. Let's follow the path of God and lead us into heaven and rise above the negativity." So Prince found substitutions, effective substitutions, and Let's Go Crazy became one of his most successful and most iconic songs throughout his very impressive library. Then in the 90s, he entered what I like to call the new power generation era, in which case he started using all types of raunchy language and all types of swearing. Basically, he really just let loose. Now, as a fan and as a creative person, I can understand wanting to stretch your creative wings, and especially since now several restraints that you were under are no longer in play. Also, as a fan and as a creative person, I can admit that there are several of his raunchy songs that I really, really enjoy. But also, as a fan and as a creative person, part of me has always felt that Prince didn't need to do that. He made a career out of balancing his content with, pushing the edge while I was still making it radio friendly. So it just felt weird that he's just doing all this raunchiness, this in-your-face, foulness in his lyrics. I understood it, I respected it, but I never felt he needed it. Now, thankfully, a few years before his untimely passing, he decided to stop cursing both in his lyrics and in his personal life. He still continued making music content, and he would still continue to be successful. That's sort of what I want with Star Trek. I understand you're on the streaming service, you got to compete with all the other streaming services. I understand you want to do new things. I understand that you want to get people talking at the same time. For 50 years, you have towed that fine line of offering mature subjects without going down the mature content route, without the raunchiness, without the really grungy, edgy kind of thing. So yeah, I hope that Star Trek will return to its brand roots, for lack of a better term, as opposed to just going all raunchy because it's the in thing to do on streaming services. And speaking of streaming service, let's talk about the F words that were used in the streaming service, as well as a swear word that was used in one of the major films, Star Trek Generations. Now, I'm not going to go through all the instances. The video that Steve Shives did, he did go through almost all the incidents, but he did miss one. And I find it very intriguing that he missed that particular one, and I understand why he missed it. In Star Trek Discovery, there is a moment between Tilly and Stamets where they just solve some weird techno-babble stuff, and Tilly says, "Ooh, that's so fucking cool," or something to that effect. And then Stamets responds, "Yeah, it is fucking cool." Now, within itself, it's not really that bad, but It's the only moment in the entire season when the F word is used. It's not used in the beginning of the season. It's not used after the beginning of the season. As far as I remember, it wasn't used in season 2. I didn't see all of season 3, but the episodes I saw, it wasn't used there. So it's just there. And remember, this is the first major Star Trek content for each major Star Trek television show since Star Trek Enterprise. So going into it, you're expecting particular things with the brand, and all of a sudden there's just these F words here that are there just to be there because, ooh, we're on a streaming service now, let's dip our toe into using the F word. You didn't need it all throughout the season, so why do you need it now? And then let's get into Star Trek Picard. As much as it frustrated me, the constant usage of the F word in Star Trek Picard, at least they fully used it. It wasn't just dipping his toe. They said, we're going to use this F word, especially when it comes to Admiral Pottymouth. The character's name is Admiral Kristen Clancy, but I call her Admiral Pottymouth because in nearly every scene she's in, she finds a word to say fuck or some version of fuck. Seriously, go watch the season. Nearly every time she's on screen, she gets that word out of her mouth. When those instances happen on Star Trek Picard, they don't feel natural. They don't feel like they belong. They feel like they're going against the brand, even though, again, there have been mature topics throughout the history of Star Trek. So let's talk about the moment he missed. It's in episode 8 of season 1 of Star Trek Picard. There are 3 instances of the F word. Admiral Pottymouth doing what Admiral Pottymouth does. There's Dr. Girardi using the F word, which was so insignificant that even Steve Shives says, hey, if you took that word out of the scene, it is just as powerful a scene. It is not necessary. And then there's the moment that Steve Shives missed. There's a scene between Rios and Rafi. Rios is confiding to Rafi what happened to his former captain and why he went into a downward spiral after leaving Starfleet. The scene is powerful, it's poignant, it talks about a really grim and dismal subject. And at some point, Rio says, my captain blew away his head for no fucking reason, or no good fucking reason, or something to that effect. And it works. Even though it says softly, you don't feel as bad at hearing because in that moment it fits the scene, it fits the character, and thus feels natural progression of the brand. Whereas all the other cursing is just like, hey, look at us, we're on a streaming service, we can say fuck. Now I want to talk about Star Trek Generations. There's a classic scene when the Enterprise D is about to crash and everyone in the bridge is looking at the monitor and Commander Data says, oh shit. That scene works because he's saying basically what everyone else on the bridge is thinking. It adds a bit of levity to a uniquely dire situation. And Commander Data just recently had his motion chip installed. So he's experiencing dread and fear pretty much the first time in his existence. So it really makes sense that he would just suddenly say, oh shit, when the ship is about to crash. That scene fits. So for the most part, people take it and enjoy it. I mean, sure, there were a couple of folks that complained, but overall, people like that scene. It works. But again, all those other curses, except for the one that Steve Shives missed, they just plain don't work. And I'm betting the reason why Shives missed it is because that moment worked so well that he didn't notice it, even though he was going through the episodes with the fine-tooth comb. So again, it's not just not having cursing for the sake of cursing. It has to work within the context. And it can be done, but it has to be done in the right way. And except for that one moment, it hasn't been done in the right way.
When Data cursed, it sounded organic. When Rios cursed, it sounded natural. But when Admiral Pottymouth curses, it sounds like...
So after I watched Mr. Shives' video, I posted a comment. Actually, I posted 2 comments. I posted a full comment and then I posted a condensed comment. But something really irked me by the way he ended his presentation, which is what inspired me to actually make my own video. He concludes by saying, folks, if you don't like the swearing, you can either watch all the old Star Trek content that doesn't have that language, you can watch other forms of entertainment just putting out there, or you can just fucking get over it. I'm sorry, Mr. Shives. No. In fact, not just no, but also
Sheer fucking hubris.
you are a fan. And for you, you're fine with the swearing. You're fine with the extracurricular content. That's fine. For you. And I imagine there are several other fans, like yourself, that's totally fine with it. But I'm not. I don't know how long you've been a fan, but I've been a fan for around 30 years. And most of my friends and family and colleagues that enjoy Star Trek have been fans for 10, 20, 30 years as well. And then there's folks like my mom, who introduced me to Star Trek. She's been a fan since the first episode. She's a day one fan. That means she's been a fan for 50 years. And speaking of my mom, there are folks that watch Star Trek with their parents. There's Star Trek with their kids. They watch Star Trek with their parents and their kids, generations, no pun intended, enjoying Star Trek for decades. So for you to tell us to just fucking get over it. No. Even though Commander Data is fully functional and programmed with multiple techniques, that doesn't necessarily mean we want to see him publishing his own holodeck version of the Kama Sutra. What a long-established brand does not offer is just as important as what a brand does offer. And Star Trek has been a brand for 50 years. It's been around longer than many of its fans are alive, so its track record is firmly established. And when it veers from that track record, it's understandable that fans like me would take objection. And there are families that enjoy all types of content under the sun. There are families and groups that enjoy watching Game of Thrones or The Boys or Black Mirror, and there are groups that enjoy watching Danger Force or My Little Pony or Paw Patrol. But we still like those brands for what they offer and for what they don't offer. So just because Sesame Street switched from public programming to HBO, that doesn't mean we want to see Prairie Dawn starring in a revival of G-String Divas. Just as you are a fan and a customer, and I assume a subscriber to Paramount Plus, we're fans, we're customers, and I am currently subscribed to Paramount Plus. And my input, my feelings about what the brand is doing or not doing is just as valid as your feelings. You're cool with the swearing, and that's fine. I'm not cool with it. My colleagues and friends aren't cool with it. And I imagine millions of others are also not cool with it. And our opinions are just as valid. So no, sir, we're not just going to fucking get over it. How dare you? Your opinion is valid. Our opinion is valid. Now, I'm the type of person that doesn't like to complain unless he has a plausible solution. I think I have a plausible solution if someone from Paramount or Columbia or whoever owns the rights are somehow watching this video. Here's my suggestion. Let's experiment with Star Trek similar to how Warner Brothers experimented with Joker and Fox experimented with Deadpool. We make some type of project exclusively for the niche audience that wants mature topics and mature content. They want the swearing, they want the blood, they want the violence, they want the whatever. We make a nice niche program for it. Hey, get Quentin Tarantino on the project if you want. And we make it for them. But here's the deal. One, you clearly market that it is for the niche audience. And two, you make it separate from main Star Trek. Because that was what was done with Joker and Deadpool, and that was part of the reason why they were so successful. Yes, Deadpool dangles the carrot that is part of the X-Men movie franchise, and yes, Joker just had to show Bruce Wayne's parents being killed for the 2 billionth time. But for the most part, those films are their own thing for their own audience, and they wound up being very successful. So let's try that with Star Trek. Let's make like a Section 31 program or something that is for that niche audience, set in its own timeline or own universe or own quadrant of the galaxy, whatever, separate, its own thing, as well as continuing making the mainstream content. If the niche is successful, keep on making niche stuff. But I pretty much guarantee that the mainstream stuff is also going to be successful. And then, instead of having to choose either or, we can have both. And this can work because there's a proven track record. Going back to Superman, even though the brand, again, is overall wholesome, that Superman is the ultimate good of good, there are alternate versions of Superman. There's Superman from Injustice, where he becomes a tyrant. There's Superman Red Sun, in which Kal-El lands in Russia instead of the United States. And Superman Red Sun and the Injustice, they all work well, but one of the reasons why they work well is because they are alternatives. They are not the main. So let's do that with Star Trek. Let's make something that is distinctively for that niche market and continue making the mainstream stuff. That way we can have both instead of either or, and neither party has to just fucking get over it. And that's my rebuttal. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it was fun and entertaining. Be sure to share whatever comments like in the comment section. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, or dislike, share, and subscribe. Once again, I am High Heel Knight. Thank you very much for watching. And remember...